Hi there, E.A. Tischler here with New Horizons Golf. Today I want to talk to you about an overview of the New Horizons Golf approach, and so that you can understand some of the topics that you will learn while becoming one of the New Horizons Golfer members. And our goal is to help you all own your own games, get to the point where you really understand what the best game for you is based upon your lifestyle, the amount of time that you put into the game, what you can manage, what you can maintain. So when we talk about the New Horizons Golf approach, there's 4 different phases of development that we look at. Everybody needs to develop their fundamental skills, so that's what we call stage 1, developing your fundamentals. In stage 2, we talk about your techniques, the different types of swing techniques you have. Not everybody swings the same way. They don't all have the same idea of how to play the game. Some people like to draw the ball, some people like to fade it, some people play it high, some people play it low. Some people like to manage their trajectories. Some people like to just play it at one trajectory. So, within the techniques, you start to find, the different ways that you play the game, and the different types of styles that there are in the game. Sam Snead was more, he kind of worked the ball, and you had Ben Hogan, who was a trajectory player. You have other people that are just very one-dimensional. They just want to play a fade, or they just want to play a draw. So within the techniques, you'll start to find those things that eventually will become what we call your method of play. Stage 3 is involved with what we call your biomechanics, and that's where we talk about the secrets of owning your swing. We aren't all built the same way. We all have different body types. We all have different structures. Dynamically, when we developed in our junior days and we developed our athleticism, we all developed different athletic patterns as well. And we want to make sure that we're utilizing our structure, and we want to make sure that we're utilizing the dynamics that we developed, to become athletes. And then beyond that, we want to understand what our functionality is. We all have had injuries in the past, or we've had issues, physically that create limitations. Now, some of those limitations we can deal with. We can get you to an athletic trainer and we can work on them. Some of them are ones that if you just don't have the time to work on it, you just have to learn to play around them and understand just what will your swing look like if you utilize the proper dynamics for you, and if you swing within your structure, what will your swing look like? All our swings don't have to look the same. I think there's this concept out there that there is this sort of perfect swing or this perfect looking swing, and throughout time they've always voted like what's the best swing on tour, and like Adam Scott's one of the guys that gets that now just because aesthetically he has a very appealing swing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody who has a swing that looks different, you look at your Jim Furyk's and you look at guys like Peter Sr., their swings don't look like the standard swing, but they're very good players, very good ball strikers. They've had great careers and won over a long period of time. So maybe that swing is perfect for them, and there could be a reason for that. The other thing is you don't have to even be perfect in your own right to play your best golf. As long as you're playing very effectively, in other words, you're using your structure and your dynamics to, let's say, at least an 80% effective ratio, then you're going to find out that you're going to play very, very good golf. And so, the better you want to play, the more efficient you need to be, the more effective that technique needs to be, and the closer and closer you want to get to 100% for you. Truly owning your swing and understanding what that is in relation to your biomechanical design. And that's one of the things that we address in stage 3 of the New Horizons Golf approach. Stage 4 involves playing the game. And so we have to end up organizing all of our skills into what I call a method of play. And you have to be very decisive that this is the type of game that you want to play. Will you be a player like a Corey Pavin or Sam Snead that like to work the ball? Will you be somebody that likes to flight it and really control their trajectories? Will you be more of a control player or a power player? Will you be a little bit more conservative or more aggressive? All these things need to be worked into your method of play. And so through the techniques that you've developed and through the skills you develop, developing a swing that actually fits your biomechanics, you will eventually understand what your method of play is. And you can see a lot of great players. I like to use Zach Johnson as a model. He really developed a method of play that worked great for him. And over time, he thought, I need more power, I need more other things to get to another level. Well, he tried to make some changes, and he went through about an 18-month period where he really struggled with his game. He went back to his old way of playing, he won immediately again, and then eventually, within a short period of time, he won a major. So sometimes the key to getting better is just mastering your method of play, getting better and better and better at utilizing it, implementing, having the commitment and the determination to play the best golf you can play within your method of play. And so those are some of the things that we learn in stage 4. The other things we learn in stage 4 is really, how do we actually master our routine? What are the things that go into having a good routine and executing shots with really good focus? And there is a process to getting into the zone. And we're going to talk about how we get into the zone, and we are eventually going to customize that for each and every one of you. The goal is to understand, what are you doing when you're in the zone? What do you do to get into the zone? And then learning how to get yourself into that state as often as possible. Everybody's a little bit different. There are some key things that need to happen for everybody. How we experience those things will be a little different. It's just like the fundamentals in the first stage of the game. There are certain things we all need to do. How we accomplish executing those is different for each and every one of us. But we still need to accomplish those fundamental goals. Okay, let's start to talk about some of those fundamental things that we need to do. And so, when we look at the game, everybody says, the grip is fundamental. Well, to me, the grip is imperative. You've got to hold on to the golf club in order to swing. You have to find a way to hold the club so that you can manage the club head and the club face, especially through the ball, so that you can get the ball flight that you want, at least the curvature, the direction of curvature that you want. So, two of the things that are extremely important is managing where that club face is facing. We like to talk about managing it as square to the arc as you can. And where's the force of that club head going through the ball? Now this involves, one other thing that we call your swing direction. In other words, if I'm going to be swinging in general, the overall motion is going out to the right. Well, chances are the force is going to be going out in that direction somewhere as well. Okay, but where's that face facing in relation to the force? That's going to actually, help us understand what our curvature is. If I want to start the ball to the right and I want to draw it back to target, I need the club face to be facing to the right of the target. So there are certain drills and things you will have to do, and you can even start very small. I can start with little swings and just notice that where I get that club face facing as I swing through the ball is helping me determine the direction that ball flight is starting in. And if I can get really good at managing where that club face is facing, then I can get a really good sense of where I'm going to start my ball flights. The next thing is what's the force doing in relation to the face? And so a lot of people with TrackMan stuff, they call it path now. I've always called it force because it's the direction of force. And technically it happens in a three-dimensional manner, so becoming exactly aware of that and feeling that, it can be a tricky thing. But you'll be able to notice that if you get the face facing straight and you actually make the club go out to the right, the ball is going to start relatively straight and it's going to curve to the left. If I get the face to face straight and I get the path to cut across it, again, it's going to start relatively straight and it's going to curve to the right. So understanding where that face is facing and how the force of the strike is actually working in relation to the face gets you to understand curvature. Johnny Miller used to do a drill where he would actually practice swinging and stopping right at the ball or right before impact to see where that face was facing. And he would practice stopping with it closed, stopping with it open, stopping with it square, just developing his awareness of what that club face is doing. My intergame coach, Fred Shoemaker, would have me swing, and during the swing at some point he'd just say stop, and I'd have to tell him where that club face was facing without looking at it. And I was doing this with my eyes closed, so I couldn't cheat. I couldn't actually look at the club face to see where it was facing. But having a great awareness of where that club face is facing and how the force of the strike is moving in relation to that club face is really going to help you determine the control of your ball flight. And these are two fundamental things that we need to do. So we got to manage the club face, and we like to try to manage it as square to the arc as possible as a general rule, not as an ideal. And then we want to get the sense of how's that force of that impact working in relation to what that club face is doing. All right. What else is fundamentals of the game? Well, we got to generate power. We got to utilize our body somehow. And so we create some sort of a pivot action or a body action, and we utilize that for power. And we got to manage how much power that we're going to generate. And so the more power we want, the bigger that we have to use the body, the bigger swing needs to get. And eventually we have to finish off that action. If we aren't finishing our actions or following through with them properly, we're going to struggle with this game. So understanding that you need some sort of a pivot action, or it's a body action, and you got to finish the job, becomes a very fundamental part of the process. If you are quitting on your pivot, if you're quitting on your swing, you're not going to get the job done. So you got to finish it off properly. And that's for whatever size swing you want. You may want a partial swing, but you still got to finish the job properly, and you got to be utilizing your pivot in order to make sure you have the right amount of power in your swing. And so, the fundamental, we just give it the name pivoting to the finish, or pivoting and finishing. And again, it doesn't mean that you're trying to be perfectly rotary. We'll get into swing techniques later on, that there are different types of swing techniques, but you definitely need to have the sense that you're creating a body motion that's helping you generate power, and you're finishing the job. Okay? Now, two other things need to happen fundamentally that all good players have, and all good athletes have in all sports, is we need rhythm and we need timing. Timing is the sequence of events. What's leading, what's following. Is there the sense that my body's way ahead of my arms and I leave my arms behind? We tend to call that late in the golf swing. Do the arms get way ahead and the body follows? And we tend to call that early in the swing. Or is there this sense of more together? Okay? And some people will feel like they're swinging in a very together manner, and they'll look like their arms are sort of back on their right pocket as they come through the ball. Other people will feel like they're swinging in a very together manner, and they'll feel like their arms are much more in front of them on the way through. And so when we get into the biomechanics side of it, we'll talk about in terms of linkage. You're actually designed to do it in a certain way. In the technique side, we call that connection. What sort of connection do you have? Well, Byron Nelson used to say, marry the right arm to the right side of the body. Other people would put a towel under both arms and keep their arms more in front of them. So again, there are different techniques for getting that connection and getting that linkage. But as a fundamental point, you have to have good timing. There has to be a sequence of things. And typically what we want to see is that there is actually a shift in pressure in the ground first, and then the body's moving, and the arms are following somewhat. And so we have this sequence of pressure, body, and arm swing. And this will bring me to one other concept that we like to talk about, is that we all have to have a good arm swing, and we all have to have a good body motion. And we all have to manage our pressure into the ground. And these are fundamentally, these are the three zones of action. We have an arm swing controlling the golf club. We have a body motion that's sort of the engine of the swing. And we have how we pressure into the ground to put more force or energy into that engine. And so those are things that we're trying to manage. Well, there's a certain sequence of events between those three zones of actions, and that's basically what timing is. Okay? The next thing we want to understand is that we have to have good rhythm. And we all have a rhythm. We have an internal rhythm. That rhythm is the rhythm of your neurology. It's a rhythm when your subconscious mind sends a signal to your body to act, and it goes through your nerve system from nerve ending to nerve ending. That information is actually traveling in a frequency. It's your natural rhythm. And we want to find out how to swing in a very natural manner. Okay, now let's think of this. There's the club face managing. There's the force that we have to manage of the club head. We've got to have a good pivot and finish. We have to have timing and rhythm. There is no way I can think about all this and play the game. So on a very fundamental level, we have to find a way to simplify this. We have to find a way to put this into action. We like to use swing sayings or swing images to do this. I don't believe in swing thoughts or overthinking too much. The thoughts have to kind of fade back into the background while we're playing. But we do have to have an image of what we want to do. And you may have something that, turn smooth, turn finish, for example. Maybe a swing saying that may help you get a good feel of a good pivot and have good rhythm and make sure you finish it off. And that may be something like this. Turn smooth, turn finish. And that ball went right where my finish was aimed. It had really good rhythm, it had good contact. I wasn't thinking about all the details. However, you better believe that somewhere along the way, I trained the club face awareness. I trained managing the force of the club head. I trained my pivot action. I trained my finish. I trained my rhythm. Okay? And there's a lot of these things you can actually do at home. You don't even have to go to the driving range. And we will discuss throughout the membership how we go about doing that. How do we develop these skills? When I was young, I was a gymnast and a martial artist, and there are certain ways we trained for those activities. And I developed something that a reporter back in the 90s called Martial Golf. And he noticed, just through my description of how I train people, that I use these forms or these training swings. In martial arts, they call them forms or katas, depending on the martial art you're in. But there are ways of training a lot of these skills and maintain them where you don't have to be out on the driving range beating balls all day long. But you do need to know what you're looking for. Okay, now let's talk about swing techniques. There are, again, a lot of different ways to play this game. Some people will focus on one or two things, in particular, and they develop their whole game around that. For example, there are a lot of people that talk about impact and where our impact alignments are. And impact is a really good way, to build a game. If you understand where your impact alignments are, and you work hard on training getting through that zone, and I would often call impact the doorway to great ball striking. So if you know where those impact dynamics or those impact alignments are, and you can get the feel of the dynamics you need through impact, you can develop a really good game. So rehearsing where that impact position is and building a swing around going through that impact alignment and finding the dynamics go with it could be a very sound way of playing this game. And then eventually all you have to do is work your swing bigger and bigger and bigger. Again, finding that sense. Where is that? And I would just work that up into a full swing. And that could be somebody's method of play. You might find that some people believe connection is the answer. So they get the towel or some sort of connection device out and they make sure that they're very connected, and they're just going to build their swing around finding the posture, finding the balance, finding the motion that allows them to stay connected as they go back and through. But that connection concept will become the very fundamental cornerstone for their technique, for their method of play. So again, we'll talk about there's a lot of different ways that you can develop this. I have one in particular I use, I call it power stacking. And so I have different levels of swings. And so a level 1 swing, a lot of people may call a knockdown. I set up and I just have this sense of 1, 2. And I get a nice medium low flighted shot, pointing right at my target, the shot goes right to the target. My level 2 shot, the trajectory is going to climb a little bit and the ball is going to go a little bit further. I add a little knee squeeze into this one to get this trajectory to come up a little bit. 1, 2. So that ball climbed higher and it went further. My level 3, I add some hip turn into this. I want to get a bigger turn back and through, and this is the first one where I get to the basic finish. 1, 2. Again, that shot went higher and further again. On the next level, I'm going to add some shoulder coil. I want to just get a bigger turn with my upper body. I'm still allowing my upper body to turn. I'm not trying to restrict it, but I'm just trying to get a bigger arc here, a bigger turn back and through now. 1, 2. Again, that ball went higher and further again. It went right where my finish was facing. The last one, I'm trying to get a bigger arc. I'm trying to get that club head to go around further. I've got a big enough turn now. I'm just going to stretch out the arc of the golf swing. I'm going to let the club go around more, and that becomes the fullest swing. To change my swing saying on this one, I say 1001, 1002 because it sounds longer to me. It just helps me get a longer swing. 1001, 1002. So that could be a method of play. Again, just choosing, I know with each club how far the ball goes when I play each level, and I get a different trajectory, and I fit those trajectories into the shots I need on the golf course. So that itself could be a method of play. So everybody's a little bit different. And in the swing techniques section, you're going to actually start to understand that different drills we recommend can turn into an actual technique that becomes your method of play. You don't have to learn them all. You just have to find one that really resonates with you, one that makes sense to you, one that you feel that you can perform really well. And when you got that, you really have something that you can depend on and stay committed to under pressure on the golf course. Okay, let's talk about stage 3, your body mechanics. So when we look at body mechanics or biomechanics, what we're looking at is there are structural influences in the golf swing, and that's your structural design based upon your anatomy, how your skeletal system works, and how all your muscles, ligaments, tendons tie everything together and get them to operate. We actually have dynamics. In other words, what are those athletic dynamic patterns we've developed? You know, when we were young, we had a couple of growth spurts and we were learning to play sports and things. There are certain dynamic patterns we developed. Well, what are those dynamics? Okay? And then we want to understand functionally, how do we work? If I have a functional limitation, how does that work? I had an accident back in 1992. I'm missing a muscle in my right shoulder. There are some functional things that I have to deal with. I have to make sure I'm exercising so that, you know, I can make up for that muscle that I don't have, but I'm still gonna, my swing has changed from before 1992 till after in the way that it looks in a couple of key ways just because I'm missing that muscle. So, you know, we have to deal with these things. This is reality. We have to look at it in a practical manner. So the first thing that we look at is your structure. We want to understand structurally how you are designed and what are you designed to do. If you are fighting your structure, it is guaranteed you are going to have injuries, and the more you fight it, the more severe your injuries are going to be. The more you swing within your structure, the more efficient you're going to be. Okay? One of the things that we look at in structure is really just how does your lower body work? Where is the balance point, you know, in your lower body, or the axis for your lower body? And this is based upon our overall body balancing. And so you'll see that some people, when they rotate, it looks like they kind of hang left. They're pivoting more over along an axis that's on the front side of their body, you know, around their front hip joint. You'll see some people load and pivot more around the rear hip joint. Other people look like they're much more stacked and more centered in what they're doing. We call this swing anchoring or posting, and so finding how that works for you is very important. This is why some people are very successful using more front load, you know, techniques, and other people are more successful using more rear load techniques, and some people are more successful with center load techniques. We still have a pedestal, we still want to rotate, we still want to be balanced, we still want to see a lot of the same activities happening, but just understanding, for example, where that balance point is and how it works in you can really help simplify your game and make it more efficient. We also have an axis for the upper body. Some people, when they turn their thoracic cage, or the upper hub you may call it, or the shoulder girdle, some people when they turn, their hub will actually torque in the rearward direction. Some people when they actually turn, it'll torque in the forward direction, and some people will be more centered. So once again, understanding how that works is really important, because you may have a player who's designed to rotate around the front hip joint, and also when they turn their upper body, it torques towards the target, and they look like they're leaning towards the target this way. And you may have a theory if somebody says, well, that's really wrong. They're doing something wrong. But if they're built to work that way, it's okay. You'll also have some players that their hips will actually torque towards the target with what we call a counter swivel, and their upper body will want to move to the right. And they'll have this almost lower body left, upper body right sort of look. Well, that's okay for them too. They have to learn how to manage that. So every part of the body, we can identify what it needs to be doing in relation to the golf swing based upon your structure and what those structural influences are. Then we also look at the dynamics. Some people are designed, when they swing, their hips will open a lot and the arms will sort of just stay with the hips and come with the hips, or the body. As the body opens, the arms just sort of stay back along the right side. Other players are designed to have the arms to catch up more to the front of the body coming down. And this is based upon some dynamic principles that we've identified. Understanding how that works for you is very important. So you'll find that golfers that have the arms catching up, they're not going to try to create as much rotary torque in their golf swing as golfers that are designed to open up more through the ball. We also have vertical force in the golf swing, in the dynamics, and we have horizontal force. You'll see some players are actually designed to have their hips swing more side to side like a pendulum motion, like this. So they're not as rotary and torquing in a horizontal direction. They're not torquing or rotating horizontal to the ground. They're using more of a pendulum type of rotation to make this work. You look at Colin Montgomery, Sergio Garcia. They're perfect examples of people that have more pendulum swings. Mike Austin, a great example of a pendulum player. So you have to understand, are you designed to be more rotary? Are you designed to have more of a pendulum swing? Are you designed to have more lateral push in your golf swing? Are you designed to have more of a vertical motion? Some players are actually better off thinking of the swing in this manner. This is a great drill for them. This isn't how they'll end up swinging, as a regular manner of play, but this will be in there. If I just get in a good squatted position here, and all I do is swing my arms in front of me, and as I swing down and through, I'm just going to stand up. We'll get an image of how I can use verticals in the golf swing. So here we go. Good squatted posture, swing and stand up. Now, looks like I didn't do much turning at all, but man, that ball really launched and it went dead straight, by the way. And so that is a vertical application, using vertical force and vertical posturing, what we call posturing up, in order to apply speed in the golf swing without trying to torque really hard, okay, with our body. Now, I can add some natural turn back and turn through into this, and it'll look a lot more natural, a lot more efficient, but I'm still going to use this vertical posturing up in the golf swing to help power the golf swing. And that would look like this. Okay, now because I used more body, I had more of an engine going there, a stronger engine, that ball went higher and further. It still went straight. But it wasn't that old concept that I was trying to rotate and posture, get my hands low, return the shaft to where the shaft was at, there's all that sort of stuff. You don't necessarily need all that. What you need to do is find out how your body's developed, what's your biomechanical structure, what dynamics do you already own and possess. We can try to improve those over time if you're into fitness and you want to work on them. Okay? But which ones you already possess, so we can learn to improve those and enhance those. And functionally, what do we have to deal with? That's what we look at when we're looking at the biomechanical side of the game. Okay, one other thing that we look at in the dynamics, is that we want to understand how we pressure into the ground. And there are a lot of different ways to use what I call a ground force pattern. I don't call it ground reaction force in this respect, because ground reaction force is what forces are being pushed back into our body. I want to know what I do to create pressure into the ground. You'll see some people have the old sort of step back, step through way of doing it. Some people will more torque their feet into the ground. So if we do a couple examples here, here's sort of the step back, step through version. Here's more of a torquing version. I'm going to try to almost corkscrew my feet into the ground, twist them back, twist them forward. Get a little bit more of what you'd see in a Bernard Longer. Some people believe more in a rocking chair type thing, like Byron Nelson or Tom Watson, where the ankles more roll back and roll through. And there's all different types of patterns. So the point is that when you're working on your footwork to get good pressure into the ground, to create a ground force pattern that's going to work for you and help sort of turbocharge your swing, you want to find out what type actually works with your design, what type works with your technique. You'll find out that you can have a beautiful looking swing technique, really good swing mechanics, everything's in order, but if the way you're pressuring in the ground doesn't match that swing technique, there'll be great looking shots and they'll be really controlled, but they'll probably be 70% the distance you could get if you had a different ground force pattern. So learning the pressure into the ground is part of the dynamics that we're looking for in the biomechanics, and that will be a key part of the game. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about playing the game. Obviously, we need a management pattern. How are we going to manage our game? Some people like to break it into every 3 holes or every 6 holes or every 9 holes and have a game plan for each of those segments of the round. Again, you have to have a committed method of play. Am I a control player? Am I a power player? Do I work the ball? Am I just control my trajectories? What is my actual method of play? We also have to manage our routine. How do we get ourselves into the zone? How do we keep ourselves into the zone? How do we perform in the zone with every shot is what we're looking for. And it doesn't have to be for a long period of time, but there's a good segment of your routine where you need to be walking yourself into the zone, settling in, and when you pull that trigger, you got to be in the flow. You got to allow yourself to be in a state of absorption or in a state of awareness where you're allowing your swing to happen. You're allowing the subconscious mind to direct the body, and consciously you're really trying to stay out of the way is what you're trying to do. And there's ways of working on that as well. So ultimately, we want to manage our game. We want to have a method of play that we're committed to. We want to stay committed to those choices. We want to have a routine that allows us to perform in the zone. And that's a good overview of what we do in the playing the game part of developing our games. Now, this sounds like a lot. Well, it is a lot, but we don't learn everything at once. When we're learning, we learn a little bit at a time, and over time, the game keeps evolving, and our game, gets better and better and better until you really have a game that you can depend on. And the key is to stick to a plan and stick to an approach or way of doing it instead of switching. If you go 3 months, 6 months, and you don't have your ultimate goals accomplished yet, and you say, well, this isn't working, I'm going to try another system, you'll never get there. Continually shifting system after system after system fails. The key is decide on a way to play the game, be happy that that's the type of game that you're going to play, and get better and better and better at executing it. Learn the subtleties of that method. So over time, you're going to develop the type of game that you can really depend on. You will see your handicap will drop, but you'll also sustain that. You won't see this big roller coaster ride of dropping handicap, raising handicap. You'll see it, steadily declining till you get to a level that you can sustain that based upon your lifestyle. And that's a lot of what the New Horizons approach is about. Now, in the end, once we understand all these things, we do have to simplify the process. And again, I like to get back to the image that we have an arm swing, and we have to manage that arm swing. We have to have something that we do to understand that our arm swing has to deliver that club through the ball. I need good contact, good compression. I need to be able to control my ball flight. And I need to have an arm swing that I can depend on, and maybe some basic drills where I reinforce that. Again, I need to have a body motion. I need to decide on a type of pivot action that I'm going to have. I may get in, and I know exactly what type of pivot action I'm going to play with right now. So for me, there's no mystery. And I work on just being more aware of that pivot action and making sure that I'm mastering my motion. Not trying to master some other idea of perfection, but master my motion. Then I have to understand that pressuring into the ground. How do I pressure into the ground? So if I have a good sense of how I actually put pressure into the ground from address, through the swing, through the finish, I'm going to actually have a good way of putting good, efficient energy in the ball swing. So it all comes back to good arm swing, good body motion, and how do I pressure into the ground. Those become the three areas that we manage over time. And really, to be good at it, we talk about setting up for success. We want to get into a setup position that allows us to be successful in our golf swing. And there's all different great players that look a lot of different ways out there as far as their setup is concerned. But you got to understand what setup works for you. Okay? Once you're set up for success, we want to know how do we trigger that swing with a good pressure shift into the ground. So if we have a good setup and we have a good pressure shift in the ground, that's going to take us well into the backswing. And all we got to do is make sure we complete that backswing, to have a good full swing. From there, it ought to be on go. We really ought to just be utilizing those skills that we've developed of just smashing through the ball all the way to a full finish, and we just got to make sure we finish it off. So for example, with the competitive golfers and tour players I work with, in the long run, I work a lot of time on their address posture, making sure that they're maintaining good address posture, making sure they trigger their swing well. From there, they just complete the backswing. And it's not even a thought, it's just an awareness. From the top, they're just they're putting it on go. They're freewheeling it, sending it, smashing through, whatever you want to call it. They're just on go through the ball. And then from there, just making sure they're finishing their swings properly. And it doesn't take a lot of thought to do that. It becomes more of an awareness. It's like a tennis stroke in tennis. You got to make sure you follow through and finish with it. You're not thinking about a lot of the details. When you throw a ball, I still got to follow through to my target. I can't just start the throw and quit on it. So it's not that there needs to be a lot of thought in this. Ultimately, we are synthesizing it down to a few, concepts: good arm swing, good body motion, good pressure into the ground. make sure I have a good address position, I trigger the swing, and I finish it off. And if I'm doing those things well, I'm going to be playing the game really well. So this is sort of a condensed view now of the type of things that we're going to talk about for the New Horizons Golfer membership, and hopefully this is going to help you create a greater understanding of where your game's going to go in the future.